Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today I want to talk to you a little bit about an amazing book which I received in the most superb circumstances, really mysterious circumstances. I just graduated from university. Well, actually it was about a year on actually from university, and I was still living in the university town. I was working in a call centre. Life wasn't going according to plan. I was really miserable, really fed up. Crummy job, really horrible boss, and out of nowhere someone sent me something. I was walking home one night after yet another terrible day at work, and when I got home I obviously got the keys out of my pocket, opened the door, and the door wouldn't quite open because there was something just behind it. Something had been put through the letterbox, and it was like a fairly hefty but medium-sized parcel, which at first I thought it had been posted, but it hadn't been posted. It had been made to look as though it was a parcel from like the 1960s or something, and it was just so lovingly put together. Brown paper, string tying it up, old-fashioned stamps on the front, and a handwritten note saying, this is for your eyes only, keep it out of the hands of the Russians. I was like, what on earth is this package? So I carefully unwrapped it, wondering what could be. Sadly, I've lost the wrapping paper. We've moved house several times since, and the wrapping paper's gone missing. But I kept it at the time. But inside the parcel was this book, The Lost Journal of Indiana Jones. Now, this book was just incredible to me at the time because I didn't, well, first of all, I didn't know it existed. In fact, it had just been published. I believe it was published at the beginning of May 2008, in the build-up to the release of The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So it was a brand new book, but it had been sent to me in such a theatrical and wonderful way that it just brought such a grin to my face. I felt like I was the only one who had a copy. I was the person who had been charged with looking after the memories and the legacy of Indiana Jones. And I asked all my friends who had sent it me. No one owned up to it. I asked the woman who would become my wife, in fact. She said, no, I didn't send that to you. No one has actually owned up to having sent me this amazing book in that amazing way, but that's how I received it, and it just made my year, if not my decade. It was a wonderful thing to receive in a wonderful way. But the book itself is superb. And this is really part of the reason why I want to talk to you about it, is because if you're a fan of Indiana Jones, I'm a fan of Indiana Jones, partly because he's awesome, but also partly because I'm an archaeologist. I love that sort of iconic representation of that sort of old school idea of what archaeology is. If you're a fan of Indiana Jones, then you need to get hold of this book. The Lost Journal is, first of all, on the front there was a label that came with it, apparently this has been in the collection of the Russian Federation, the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation, and it's come to them via the KGB, having been recovered in Peru sometime in and around the events of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And the diary is not only a journal of the events that we know about. So, for example, there are pages taken from Indiana Jones's father's diary, for example, looking at the clues in the temple where the cup of Christ is kept, the Holy Grail is. But also, as well, it fills in some of the interesting gaps which are hinted at in the films. I've done some reading up on the background of this book, and actually they brought in prop masters and designers and people who worked on the Indiana Jones trilogy, and also actually the Young Indiana Jones TV series, to put this book together in a really loving way. Now there's loads of I suppose fan service, loads of little nods and winks. So, for example, on the map that apparently Indiana Jones uses at the beginning of the Raiders of the Lost Ark, there is something called Paramount Peak of Mount Schubert, and Paramount Peak is obviously a reference to the opening shot of Raiders when they found a mountain that looked like the Paramount logo, and they faded into it from the Paramount logo. So little things like that, sort of production level in jokes. But also, for me personally, there's a really satisfying thread which they put into this diary, into this journal, and that is the search for the Peacock's Eye. Now, the Peacock's Eye, you may or may not know, is a jewel which comes into Indy's life in 1918, and he draws it. He finds it with Remy, one of his companions in the Young Indiana Jones adventures, and this arguably is the defining treasure of Indy's life. Never mind the Grail, never mind the Lost Ark. He spends from 1918 to at least 1957 searching for the Peacock's Eye. Now, the Peacock's Eye turns up in the Temple of Doom. It's actually the gem, the diamond, which Lao Che is trying to trade with Indy at the beginning of the Temple of Doom. And if I just go to that part of his diary, you'll see that there is a drawing of the diamond. He's actually done a little sketch. Update: India meeting at Club Obi-Wan was not successful. As for the diamond, here's a quick sketch from memory, he says. I only got one good look at it before, let's see, I was poisoned, shot at, sabotaged, crash landed and rode down the mountain in a life raft. Not bad for a day's work. Now, what's really cool is that not only have you got this thread of the Peacock's Eye, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but it also explains where the little pot, the remains of the Emperor, come from. Those remains, actually, in the diary, are from some missing years in the journal, where Indy has actually torn out pages from the book. There are pages missing where he's torn them out. The Russians make a note saying approximately 4 pages are missing from the journal here, skipping from May 1933 until September 1935. However, we've located Dr. Jones's passport from this era and included it so we can trace his whereabouts in 1935. His whereabouts in 1934 are unfortunately still unknown. Now this, if you are a huge fan of Indiana Jones, is actually an insider reference to a computer game. In the passport, he's in Ceylon at the beginning of 1935, in January, and that is when he is in the computer game, the Emperor's Tomb. So in the Emperor's Tomb, or rather the Emperor's Tomb happens in this era where he's torn pages out of the diary, and then leads directly into the events in the Temple of Doom. So it's the way that they've tied together so lovingly all these different elements of the Indiana Jones story: the TV show, the computer games, the films, and as I say, the search for the Peacock's Eye continues all the way through, and in 1957, in amongst some hints at what's to come in the upcoming Crystal Skull movie, we have a note from Short Round that says, "Dear Dr. Jones, you won't believe it, I'm close to finding the Peacock's Eye. You know, after all this time I keep looking, and I keep looking, and it is in Hawaii. It's on the island they call Nihai, and it's fallen into the hands of natives. Yeah, no time for love, right, Dr. Jones? Your friend, Short Round." And that's September 15th, 1957. So they lovingly add as well. They don't just trace, they don't just fill in the gaps, but they also add to these threads in Indiana Jones's life, and that's what makes this book so good. There are sketches, for example, of his lucky lighter in here. There's a diagram showing how he found the Well of Souls, where the Ark of the Covenant was stored for thousands of years. There's also as well actually little notes. So for example, you have just after on the same spread where he's drawn a little plan of the village that they land in or arrive in Temple of Doom. He's also got a little instruction manual for Ford Trimotor, which is the plane that crashes. It says, to-do list: reclaim the Peacock's Eye. You see, it's there, the Peacock's Eye. Return library books / pay fines. Send invoice to Brody for artifact recovery. Finish course evaluations and learn how to fly a plane. Now, what's really cool is you've got the note there, and then go flash forward to the time of the Last Crusade, and he's learned how to fly a plane. But on the page where he's got the tickets for the Zeppelin that he and his father take in the Last Crusade, there's a little note, bottom right hand corner: to do, work on German accent, read more Charlemagne, and also learn how to land a plane. So he knows how to fly a plane, but not land. And again, this is amazing little hints, tidbits, fan service. There's the package that his father sends him the Grail diary in. There's just so much good stuff in here, and it's all littered with notes from the Russian Federation, who are commenting, and I suppose in that sense playing the role of the commentator for the benefit of the reader. And it's wonderful. Now, when it comes to the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull section, it's very light. Suddenly, his entries become very, very vague, and this is because they were just whetting our appetites for the movie. And in that sense, I would have rather that this book came out after the movie, so they could have been a bit more, I suppose, in keeping with the same tone and the same amount of information that he puts in the rest of the diary. But, for example, there's a reference to fake houses that are set to blow up in nuclear tests. There's an advert for a fridge in which he says, "Got to get one of these, looks pretty durable." And of course, at this point, I had no idea that this was hinting that he was going to get inside one and apparently survive a nuclear blast. There's reference to Dwight Eisenhower becoming president, and he says, "Ike is here to stay for a while anyway, it seems." And if you recall, in the fourth movie he does say, "I like Ike." There's also some reference to UFOs, this kind of thing, and also reference to the ominous nature of the Russians, the Reds, and also a photograph of his son Mutt. Now, of course, some people really don't like the fourth film, and that's fine, that's absolutely fine. But I do like the way that they have tied all this stuff together in the Lost Journal of Indiana Jones, and this brought me such joy in that I suppose that really rather dark year. You know, at a time when I felt as though life wasn't going according to plan. I felt like perhaps I'd made the wrong decision training to be an archaeologist at university. Perhaps all I could do was do call centre work. You know, someone had the wonderful idea of sending me Indiana Jones Lost Journal in such a creative way, and it started to turn my life around. In that year, I went on to, for example, to find a job down in York, working for the York Archaeological Trust. I went on to cement my relationship with my then girlfriend, but now my wife. And I'm not saying that this book did it single-handedly, but this book certainly helped me on the path to looking out there, to being adventurous, to being creative again with my future, you know. And I'm so grateful for that. So whoever sent me that book, I am just in your debt, and I'm sure you must know it. You must have heard, or you must have just sort of denied having sent me it. Whoever it is that sent me it, I'm sure you would have known how happy I was with it, and how great it is. But anyway, I didn't want to spoil all the different things that are in the diary. I didn't want to ruin this journal for you. If you are a fan of Indiana Jones, you simply have to get this book. It ties so much together. It starts off, actually, and I didn't even talk about this, it starts off in his childhood. It starts off with photographs which, well, actually, sorry, one of them, I'll show you this, it does turn up, one of them does turn up actually in the Last Crusade. There's a photo which Indy uncovers on the desk of his father when the house has been ransacked, and that's in the diary here. So it starts off with him, for example, meeting people like Lawrence of Arabia and other very important figures from the early 1900s, and it sort of grows from there. It's a brilliant reference, I suppose. It's a brilliant piece of fun fiction, fan fiction, and it's a wonderful way to soak up the world of Indiana Jones. And like I said, I just wish that they'd been able to do a little bit more in terms of the rounded feeling that you have in the rest of the diary for those last few pages. But we understand why they didn't do that, and that's because this is sort of marketing as well for the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Anyway, I cannot recommend this book enough. You simply have to get it if you are a fan of Dr. Jones. And with that in mind, I shall wish you well. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.